Okay, so in continuation to what we discussed yesterday, so there are a few more things that we need to cover as part of elicitation. Okay, um, so whenever we question, right? So there are majorly three needs for questioning. Okay, so the three needs are what you see on the screen. Okay, so you need to make a decision, right? And you need data to inform that decision. Okay, and you also want to reduce uncertainty related to any assumptions that you have, and you also want to understand the performance and impact. Okay, so these are the three broad needs on why you uh, question or elicit requirements from users. Okay, and so you want to know if something is working or not, or you want to prove something um, is not working or will work, right? So when you're making decisions, right? So a lot of times we are stuck with uh, 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 not being able to make decisions because our decisions involve assumptions, right? So it's important to know that so we should be able to make decisions with assumptions, and assumptions basically guide decisions, and we typically want to know if something is working so that we can make a decision, right? So you need to still be able to make a decision based on some assumptions. Okay, otherwise we'll not be able to make a decision. Okay, so that's the next one. So the so in extension to what we discussed in the previous slide, so we also need to find out where we need to reduce uncertainty. Okay, and you need to also make it safe to ask dumb and less clear questions, and you can't really rush it. Okay, and so when people so when you're entering into a brainstorming session, right, and people who are in the brainstorming session are worried that they may look silly, okay, then they will shut down automatically. Or if they feel rushed, right, they will only stick to just the surface level questions. So you should always encourage people to ask questions, so even though they are like dumb or less clear. Okay, so that's another thing you need to keep in mind. And especially when we are brainstorming, right? So we need to refine and prioritize questions. So it will help us to try going up and down. So we need to ask few open-ended questions followed by a closed-ended question and then open-ended question. Okay, so if you keep asking open-ended questions, so the user may not like it. So always keep, flexing up and down. So just like how you flex when you work out, right? So it's something similar. So you ask a couple of open-ended questions, then close-ended, and then you keep juggling between that. This is a quick reminder on the options you have when you're asking questions, right? So you have to think of using each of these when you're asking questions. Okay, so these are like pretty good starters for asking any open-ended questions, especially during brainstorming. Okay, so try to use as many of these in your elicitation. So the other common thing is, so when you often when you get into meetings, right, or maybe like brainstorming sessions or focus group discussions, you will end up in a lot of silence. Okay, so where you ask questions and people don't talk, right? So in such situations, you can use something like Monopoly Money. So where where you allocate like fictitious reward or fictitious money for good questions, okay? Or people who are asking like more number of questions, right? So you can allocate money per question, okay? So this is a good proven way to encourage people to ask questions, especially when you're into a brainstorming session and you come across audience who are not that interactive, okay? Okay, so that's on the elicitation. So we'll look at some of the questions that you can ask when you're for open-ended, and then when you're validating a problem and when you're validating a solution. Okay. Okay, so these are some of the questions. So I'll share them with you for your reference. Okay, so the first one is, so I'm just giving you a simple real-time example that I normally use, okay? So you all know that I provide training on business analysis and Scrum, right? So when I reach out to people, so I use a lot of open-ended question. So I'm giving you an example that all of you can relate to. So the first thing is I predominantly use LinkedIn, right? So I have like close to 12,000 followers on LinkedIn, and my goal is to get to know my LinkedIn followers better. Okay, so why are they following better? And so I keep sharing a lot of content on LinkedIn, and I want to understand my LinkedIn followers better, and then I want to expand beyond sharing content on LinkedIn. Okay, so I want to mentor them, for example. Okay, then so you need to always have a goal when you are getting into open-ended questioning. Okay, so you need to define your goal. Okay, so when you're getting into a open-ended questioning mode, right? So maybe you want to find the root cause of a problem, or maybe you want to understand the new opportunities that your user is asking for, or maybe you want to document the top 3 pain points. Okay, so you need to you need to write down your goals. Okay, then the second thing is you figure out who are your target audience. Okay, so for example, I may have 12,000 followers on LinkedIn, but so not all 12,000 are my target audience, right? So people who are like highly active, so people who like my content or comment on my content on a frequent basis, right? So those are the target audience. Okay, so those are the people with specific or high intent group. Okay, then then the next thing is, so you have to set the context. So for example, uh, I love creating content on LinkedIn and sharing my knowledge, right? But I also plan to expand beyond it. Before I do that, so I want to learn more about you to make sure whatever I make will be useful. Okay, so I'm setting the context with the target audience. Okay, so always set the context with the audience. And so hope everyone is clear of the scenario that we are getting into, right? So for that scenario, I ask these 9 questions. Okay, so these 9 questions will help me understand my target audience better and then come up with a better solution. Okay, so if you look at these questions, right, so then the first thing that I'm going to ask is, what are your goals for your career within business analysis, right, or beyond that? So I'm just trying to understand what are their goals. Okay, and then what's their biggest pain point, okay, in getting to these goals. Okay, and if you could have anything you want to help your career, what would that be? So I'm just trying to understand what are the key points they have. Okay, then I'm trying to understand so this is an important question. Okay, so if you look at it, so tell me about the last time you looked for information about business analysis. Okay, so the reason I ask this question is because this will help me identify people who are actually having this intention to learn business analysis, but they're not serious about it. Okay, so you find, so let's say if you post on LinkedIn, right? So there will be a lot of people, maybe like hundreds of people who will comment interested, but at least like only less than 10% of them are actually serious about it. Okay, so by asking this question, I really know whether a person is actually interested in the to learn business analysis or not. Okay, so if someone is really interested, right, they would have already explored different options, right? So they would have already looked up for trainings or certifications or free online content. So if somebody is coming and telling me that no, okay, so I have not looked at anything, so that is a warning sign that, okay, so you're talking to a audience who's not very interested. Okay, or maybe the problem is not a serious problem, it's not a real pain point for them. So when you go and talk to your user about a problem they keep complaining about, always ask, when was the last time they faced that problem? Okay, so when was the last time this happened? Okay, so if they're not able to tell the last time, or if it's not, or if it has not happened in the recent past, right? Maybe you're not trying to solve an important problem. Okay, there are other important problems to solve. Okay. Then you ask other questions like, so what do you wish you had access to, and what other resources? So something which is an extension of question 5, and this is more linked to my way of questioning. Okay, so but you need to ask, you need to ask what are their goals, what are their biggest pain points, and did they do anything to solve that pain point before? Okay, and use questions like these to elicit more thoughtful and insightful responses when compared to questions which start with these, right? So um, questions starting with these elicit more open-ended questions. Okay, so for example, do you think this is good or bad, right? Do you think uh, do you think this is the right option or not? Okay, so when you, so the more, when you ask questions starting with these, right, so it would more or less be like one word or two word answers. But when you ask questions like these, right, so you can ask like really good open-ended questions. So always try to use these 5 words and 5 W words and 1 H. So any questions on open-ended questions? Okay, so the next one is I'm going to show you a sample of validating a problem. Okay, so here I am just giving you a simple problem where a customer wants to is having a trouble to reorder something on the screen. Okay, so it could be like transactions, or it could be like on a website. So they are having trouble to reorder something on the screen. Okay, then same thing. So you define the goal, you define the target audience, then you have the context. So when you're trying to find the problem, right? So don't uh, tell what is the problem according to you. Okay, so don't so avoid leading the witness to the problem. Don't explicitly mention. So instead, you need to find out what is the real problem. Okay, so for example, the user comes and tells you that, okay, so I have trouble reordering or sorting the transactions on the screen. Okay, so you should not start your goal, or you should not say that your goal is to find out what are the reasons or what are the pain points for sorting. Okay, what is the problem that she's exactly facing in relation to sorting the transactions or ordering the transactions. Instead, your goal should be like very generic. when you're getting into elicitation. Okay. So here are some of the sample questions that you can ask, for a user who's facing an issue with sorting transactions or orders on a shopping site. Okay. So you start with how are you finding the shopping experience? Okay. So this is more of a general open-ended question which you're asking. And then you ask what bothers you. Okay. So then they will give you a laundry list of all the problems, right? And so then you get into the details of the ordering. And then you ask questions to understand more about what kind of problems are they facing. Okay, so then that's how you will be able to find out what is their actual problem. And this one, right, again, it will help you. This one will help you to understand if it's an important problem or not. Okay, so if you can ask users, okay, you said this is a problem, but how are you currently solving it? Okay, so do you have any workaround? So what are you exactly doing to solve it? So if they're not really doing anything to solve it, right, or maybe it's sitting there for some years, maybe you're not solving an important problem. So that's something you need to look at. The other important thing is a lot of times when we talk to users, we ask them questions about future. Okay, so what are you trying to do with the screen? Okay, so or what are you going to order on the screen, right? So when you ask about future, right, nobody is very clear on what is going to happen in future. So there is a very high probability that they will give you a set of requirements which are not quite useful. So whenever you are trying to understand a problem, right, or validate a solution, you should focus more. I'm not saying that you should not ask any future related question on how they're going to use it in future or anything related to future, but the focus should be more on understanding the as is and what happened in the past. Okay, so that will help you create a good understanding of the problem. Okay, so the next one is on the solution. Same. So you create a goal, the target audience, and the context, and then you ask questions like these where can you tell us what you're looking at, or what do you expect to happen now, and what does X mean to you? So you are not giving the background of the solution. So a lot of times what we tend to do is, so when we are validating a solution, right, let's say you create a mock-up screen. Okay, so we create a mock-up screen, we get into walkthrough session with the users, and we'll say, okay, so can you click on the login button, which is at the top right? Right? And then, okay, so here you see the login and password. So can you input login? So login will be your LAN ID or maybe your email ID. And then password will be your, email password. So we'll be like leading them to, what all the actions, right? So that's not a good way to validate solution. So you need to let the users, you need to free up the users and let them decide. And that's how you will know what problems they are likely to face when you actually go live with the solution. So a good way to validate a solution is give minimal information about the solution and ask users these questions. Okay, so can you tell us what you're looking at? What do you expect to happen now, and what does this mean to you? Okay, so when you ask questions like these, right, so they will tell you what is their exact understanding. For example, let's say if you have put the login screen at the top right, and then the user looks at the screen for 5 minutes, and after 5 minutes he asks you, where is the login screen? I'm not able to find it. Okay, so that's a good indicator for you that you have not designed the login screen. You've not considered the user experience when you're designing the screen. So your user is looking at your screen for 5 minutes and he's not able to locate login screen. So that's why always ask questions before you actually explain. Don't guide the user to the solutions. Okay, so I think someone asked about gap analysis also, right? So how do we make sure that we are asking good questions for gap analysis? So here is a checklist so that I can send it to you, which you can use whenever you're.
Ravi, for that, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So when we start doing gap analysis, is for the existing system or is for the new system? Because I have a doubt in this.
Okay, so you do a gap analysis when you have a problem in the existing system, and also when you don't have a system, right? So you have an as is, or you have a set of requirements, and then you have a to be. So an example where you don't have an existing system, right? For example, you want to launch a new trading platform. Okay, so your bank is trying to trade in let's say equities. Okay, so they were not trading in equities before, and you want to launch a new trading platform for equities, and you have a set of requirements, business requirements. Okay, so you created an RFP, request for proposal. So now you have your vendors solutions. Okay, so like you got proposals from 10 different vendors. So you do a comparison of their proposal and your requirements, right? So that is also called gap analysis. So comparing what you want versus what is there, what is actually there, is gap analysis.
So what I was thinking is that let's say there is an existing system, so that is getting upgraded to the new platform. So whatever in the existing system is there, you need to replicate this thing into the new
Correct.
system.
So that is also
Advanced
gap
optimization.
analysis. Yeah, that's also gap analysis. So you have an existing system, and then you have an upgraded version. So you do a gap analysis between them. Okay, so you
Yes.
have a legacy system, you want to decommission that, but you want to develop a new system, then you do a gap analysis.
Okay.
Ravi,
Okay.
I can give you an example. Can you confirm this is also a part of gap analysis? So, like we have a different product that we customize based on the client requirement. So, mostly 80% of the solution is from the base, and 20% we configure based on the client requirement. So, what we do, we understand
Ajay,
what
I'm
client.
sorry, Vijay. I lost your um, voice for some time. Can you repeat it? So you
Yeah.
said
So
you had a situation.
no, basically, what we does, we have a base program. Base program means we have already customized products,
Mhm.
so we configure it based on the client requirement. So
Yeah.
most of the cases, 80 to 90%, it remains same. 10% is as per client customization. So that is also similarly as we does the gap analysis, right?
Yeah, correct. So basically you have a product, and then you have your users, customers requirements, right? So they could be, so you do a gap analysis between what your product can offer and what your customer is expecting.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is the gap analysis. Yeah.
Ravi, do we get gap analysis document, or is that only business analyst do that work, or any other person also involved in the?
So, normally a business analyst would be driving it, but you get inputs from various other stakeholders. Okay. So you talk to your solution architects, you talk to your business users, and a lot of them actually.
Because in my air drive, I saw a lot of, few documents related to the gap, but they weren't mentioned the who was the contributor in that, but only the analysis part was there. It was like printed documents. So I thought, okay, someone, a product owner might be providing this and we have to analyze it and analyze.
No, there will be a lot of contributors, but end of the day, so it's part of business analyst roles and responsibilities to do the gap analysis. Obviously, you will engage with a lot of stakeholders across departments, right?
Okay.
So you will put them as contributors or maybe reviewers or approvers, but you will be the owner of the document.
Okay.
Okay, so this is something we discussed before, right? So first is we identify gaps, then we explore each of the gaps, and then we understand the causes. We group them into themes, and then we prioritize the gaps. Okay, so you can use something like traffic light rating, green, yellow, and red. So green is something like you really want, and yellow is something like which is not, which is like nice to have, and red is something which is not required. So then you prioritize them, and then you understand the current state. And if you want to understand current state, right, ask these questions. Okay, so use these questions as references. And if you want to understand the target state, use these questions. Then for analyzing causes, so I've created questions that you can ask at each stage. And so you can also to come up with a list of gaps, right? You can also use techniques like SWOT analysis or 5 Eyes or the fishbone technique that we have seen, right? So that also will give you a lot of gaps between the to be and the as is. Okay, and so some of the other tips that I mentioned here, identify the current process stakeholder, obtain the documents. So always measure the key metrics of and feedback of as is and to be. So what are the key functionalities and how do they measure it? Okay, and then identify any actual and potential adverse events. And so a lot of times we think that, okay, so when we do the gap analysis, right, that, okay, so we finish the requirement gathering. Okay, so gap analysis is only a high level tool. So we don't get into the details of the problems. So we just on a high level, so we detail and then the gaps, and then we prioritize them, and then we dig into deeper during our requirements. Okay, and so that's something to remember. It's not a detailed requirement analysis. It's only a high level tool. And then involve your stakeholders, and so that they can help you understand why the gaps exist. Okay, and what is currently happening. So that's more important. And when you're implementing a new solution, right, always look for people who have already implemented the change. Okay, so people, there may be other people in your organization who must have already implemented a similar change. So that would give you a good list of gaps as well. Okay, and so use the traffic light signal mechanism to focus on the critical gaps. Okay, so these could be like the really important gaps that you want to identify. Okay, and so that's on the gap analysis. I'll be sharing the set of questions to you. The next thing that I want to, I think I forgot to mention is a lot of times we have these elicitation meetings, but we don't know how to end these meetings. Okay, so a good way to end these meetings is by asking two questions. Okay, so the first question is, so a lot of times we ask questions and we think, okay, we asked all the good questions, right? But the user or the stakeholder who's on the call, he knows that, okay, you didn't ask good questions and you didn't gather all the information required. Okay, and at the same time they don't want to say that on your face. Okay, so you need to give them an opportunity to tell them that, okay, you didn't cover some of the concepts. Okay, so the good opportunity is when you ask a question, something like this. Okay, so when you ask something like this, where is there anything else you think I should look at? Is there anything else that you want to tell about this problem. Okay, so that's when you're giving a user a chance to explain. A lot of times we get into this questioning mode, we prepare a lot and then we go and ask our questions and then come back. So always when you end the elicitation, right, ask the user, is there anything else that you think I should be looking at, or is there anything else that you would like to share with regards to this problem or opportunity, right? So that's the first question. Then the second one is, a lot of times we miss talking to the most important people. So always ask, who else should I talk to with regards to this requirement or problem? Okay, so when you ask that question, right, they will give you more context who are relevant to this problem. So that way you will also not miss out on the key stakeholders. So always ask these two questions. So is there anything else that I missed and that you want to share? Who else should I talk to with regards to this requirement? Okay, so two important questions when always to ask when you're ending your elicitation. Okay, so with this, we have come to an end of the elicitation. So these are like broad guidelines, okay? And every BA develops their unique style when you start working on it, okay? So a lot of times you look at the context and then the way your organization works and leverage on each of these, and eventually you will build your own style. So any questions on what we covered?
Yeah, Ravi, I have a question. So can we review whatever elicitation we did on the call itself, or do we have to do MOM, that is minutes of meeting through mail?
So you can do a quick summary. I mean, like a 3 to 4 sentences summary. Okay, so these are the key points, and you send minutes after the meeting.
Okay.
And so also in minutes, right? Normally what I do is I first put the actions. Okay, so I start with actions and then key points and then the attendees of the meeting. So a lot of BAs have seen, so they put attendees, then the minutes, and then the actions at the end, correct? But what is more important is the action. So I put actions at the beginning, then minutes, and the attendees at the end. So this order will help users to focus on actions.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the elicitation. Hope it was useful. And
Ravi, action in the sense action to be taken, right? That is what you're saying.
yeah, correct. So action points. So action points and the owner.
Okay. So minutes of the meeting in the sense we are kind of putting it across what has been discussed. So it's kind of an input, and what is the output is like what actions to be taken. That
Correct.
is how it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what are the follow on steps? The next steps, right? So you will put in as actions. The minutes of meeting is really important, especially when you start working, right? Because I've seen users say something in the requirements meetings and then later come back, okay, I didn't say that. Okay, so when you have minutes, it's actually a good way to validate your understanding with the users. Okay, so now we'll look at the interview questions. So did you guys get a chance to go through the recordings, or were you busy? Or?
Yeah, Ravi, I'm quite busy, Ravi, because I have a lot of volumes in my process. So, was it able? I'm working like 13, 14 hours.
Okay. How about others?
Yes, I did have chance to go through the videos again.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so a generic observation, a general observation, so something that's there with me as well. Often we tend to give a lot of respect and importance to other people than ourselves, right? So for example, if we set up a meeting with others, we give a lot of importance to others, right? And we make sure that we join that meeting, and then we make sure that we help them out. But we don't create meetings, or we don't create time for ourselves. Okay, so because we don't respect or give the same value to ourselves, and we give like more value to other people. So focusing more on personal development, creating this time, right? It's very important. So a good way is to just book your calendar, maybe like 1 hour every day, to go through these recordings and check out any other interactions or meetings with other people. So we should respect ourselves before others. Okay, so always self should come before others. So I would suggest book meetings in your calendar for next 5 days, 5-6 days. Go through the recordings. That will be really beneficial for you. Okay, so I'm hoping at least some of you have got a chance to go through. We'll do a simple exercise today. So I'll give you one situational question, which is, so a lot of times when you don't have actual business analysis experience, right? People will check your knowledge. People will check your analysis skills to understand if you're the right person to do the BA role or not. Okay, so one way to check, and also it's a way to self-validate, is so I always ask a question in the interview. So this is the question that I ask. Okay, so I go to the so I am in a restaurant. So I go to a restaurant, and then so think of a Chinese restaurant. Okay, so maybe something like a Taipei restaurant, and then you have so you see the restaurant, you went inside, so you see the number of waiters, you see the number of tables, chairs, and all of that. So now I want you to come up with questions or points that you would consider, and tell me how much is the approximate revenue of that restaurant. Okay, so what questions will you ask, and how will you come up to derive the revenue of that restaurant? Okay, so I will divide into a team of 3 people. So if you could maybe 2 teams, like team of 4 people. So we can like break out for 5 minutes. Think of
Ravi, I'm sorry, Ravi, extremely. I did not get your question actually.
Okay.
I was not listening, sorry, that's the reason.
Okay, so the question is, so you go into a restaurant, and so how much is the revenue of that restaurant? So I want you to analyze and tell me how much is I'm not looking at the exact figure, but what are the different questions that you will ask, and how will you analyze and come up with this revenue of a restaurant? Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so this will actually validate your analysis skills on how do you analyze something which is unknown to you.
So we are asking these questions to the restaurant owner, or
Yeah, so yeah, maybe the restaurant owner, or someone who's there
staff.
in the
Yeah.
restaurant.
Okay.
And then so finally, after asking all these questions, right, the answer should help you to find out what is the approximate revenue of that restaurant.
Okay.
Okay.
Ravi, you will be grouping us into a team, or it is like
Yeah,
an individual person?
two. So you will be grouped into 2. And so I'll pull you back in like 5-6 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, Maninder, you're saying something. I just missed out.
No, I was saying revenue is everything. Venkatesh involves everything, your operating expenses as well, not just profit.
No, actually, revenue is a total income in my mind. So we need to clarify this one. Ravi,
Yeah, hi. Hi.
what do you mean by revenue? Is it total income without calculating any expenditure?
Yeah, correct. So total
So
income.
there is no point in calculating expenditure. If we calculating profit, we need to calculate what is expenditure.
Yeah. Yeah, so revenue is like the total income that you're getting. So you don't exclude any. So I'm not asking for any profit. So just revenue.
Yeah, exactly.
So Ravi will include the operating expenses also, right? When we decide the revenue.
No, so we don't include any.
I think the wages, the operating expenses is everything should be part of the revenue.
In calculating profit, I think we need to deduct total income minus what is the expenditure. So total profit we'll calculate. Basically, here the point is calculating the total income.
Yeah, so total, like how much is the overall incoming? So forget about what is outgoing, just whatever is the incoming cash flow. That's something.
Okay.
So maybe, yeah. So we'll listen to group one. So I think, or we'll first start with group two. Who can anyone explain? So what questions you will ask and how will you derive this?
Yeah, basically we start off with asking about per hour revenue. Venkatesh, can you put it in better words, like you told?
We need to actually we concluded that there are three factors for three factors that depends on the income generation, like what is the total seating capacity and how many hours the restaurant works, and what is footfall, like what is the coverage ratio of whether the total seats are being occupied for the complete hours or what so these are the three factors we consider while calculating the total revenue. So
and also the area where it is situated, so that
it is irrelevant actually. So the thing is so and also what is the cost each person get what is the total what is the cost of for each person. So in this way we can calculate, I think.
So Ravi, I will put it across over here.
Yeah.
So some questionnaires that we kind of discussed.
Yeah, so I'm more interested in the questions that you will ask. So forget about whether we are going to find out the actual revenue or not. So just the
I'm just putting it across. So we'll be asking across like what is the number of hours the restaurant is working for, okay, and then how many number of shifts are there. And on the basis of shifts, what is the average for each shift? Means average number of person that come on each shift.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah.
And how many number of seats are there? Total number of seats are there, and how many it is getting occupied on a shift basis.
Yeah.
So on that basis, we can kind of deduce what is the total number, and then we can calculate, means kind of add the number of shifts and get a average revenue out of it.
Okay. Okay, so not bad. Any other questions?
So I think what Venkatesh and Shu covered, like we'll ask about the number of orders, right? We receive per day. We can have dine-in orders, Ravi, or we can have a takeaway orders also receiving that we receive online. So we'll probably ask that question as well. What is the number of orders being served from takeaway or the dine-in?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so you thought about dine-in and takeaway. That's good.
We'll also ask about the cost of like, the average order, which is like, there must be like, the biryani. If you take example for biryani, there will be more orders for biryani. So we'll consider the cost of that item.
Yeah.
So Ravi, we
Yeah,
can
so
also confirm what kind of meal they are serving, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So once they are confirmed, they are just serving suppose 3 meal or 2 meal, and then we can ask the average cost of each meal, like how much is the average cost of lunch, and how much is the cost of dinner. And again, we can ask there is a segregation between veg and non-veg.
Also alcohol and non-alcohol, because they're like huge expenses for license and all that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and also we can just ask average footfall during each meal, and then we can multiply with footfall into average meal cost. And also we can
No,
ask if there is any variation.
Tanera.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Avuna.
I think Venkatesh.
7 sir. Okay.
Once again. Yeah, Ritika.
Maybe I would ask, like, what is this customer satisfaction? How good is the customer satisfied? And, maybe I think that is important, like, what quality you provide, and how satisfied is the customer. So that's how the traffic is driven towards the restaurant. So that is very important. What quality standards are they maintaining? So what cost is going into it? And depending on the quality, I think the customer satisfaction is that is end of the thing. I think that's very important. So how good are your customers satisfied? Like, how are the reviews? And so that's how there is good traffic driving towards the restaurant, and that automatically generates very good business. So focusing on this is very important. So maybe I will ask questions like, what are the quality standards you're maintaining, and how good are your customers satisfied, and what kind of reviews you get from your customers. Like, so what are the area of improvements your customers are giving you feedback?
Okay, that's good. Any other questions?
The one Ravi, but the one question I want to ask, we need to ask like the average number of participant is a constant during the year, or there is variation. So is
Yeah,
there any
that's a good point.
please explain, sir.
So whenever you come across questions like these, right, in interviews, so there are two things that people will look at. So how are you able to, logically structure your thoughts? Okay, so are they like really haphazard, or are you able to logically sequence? So how clear is your thought process, right, in terms of analysis? So that will validate how good you are in analysis. Okay, the second thing that people will look at is how are you able to identify the outlier scenarios or the negative scenarios. Okay, so are you able to think of these outliers, or are you able to just think of the surface level questions? Okay, so always take your time and think in those directions. So for example, let's say if you have to analyze, so all good questions so you've asked, but it can be like more structured. So, okay, so something like this. Okay, so I walk into the restaurant, and then first thing is, so I'll walk to the owner of the restaurant, and then I'll ask him, how many hours is the restaurant open? And so do they have any time off? Are they open during weekends or on public holidays or not? Okay, so is the restaurant closed on any day of the week? Okay, so I'll gather these basic informations about the information about the restaurant, and then I will ask them if do they only have in-house dining, or do they also have takeaway? Okay, so takeaway, if it's takeaway, so then I'll do the takeaway revenue separately at the end. So I'll first focus on the in-house dining. So in terms of in-house dining, so I will ask them, so how many number of guests walk into the restaurant on a day? Okay, and so do they have any shifts? Okay, so do they have like morning, afternoon, and evening? And how many guests would walk in per shift? Okay, how many guests are served per shift on an average? Okay, so the reason I want to take care of this is because I want to see what is the average footfall based on each of these shifts. Okay, and then how many tables are there in the restaurant, so obviously, and how many chairs are there, right? So that will give me a good understanding of how many guests, maximum guests that can come into the uh, restaurant, right? So I will also ask what is the table usage. Okay, so let's say if you have 5 chairs per table, right? And what is the average table usage? Is it 3 or 2? What is the average table usage? So based on that, I will determine what is the occupancy of the restaurant, and then I will use that to validate my numbers, whether I'm giving a realistic revenue or not. Then I will also ask the owner to show me the menu. I will look at the pricing of each of the products. Okay, so I will look at what is the pricing for the breakfast menu, what is the pricing for lunch, and what is the pricing for dinner menu. And I will use this as a basis to calculate the revenue per shift. Okay, and then I will also ask whether the restaurant is open on weekends and public holidays. These are outlier scenarios. I will ask them, so what is the footfall? What is the number of guests, and what are the number of shifts that you serve during weekends and public holidays? Okay, so those are outliers, and I'll calculate separate revenue for those. Okay, so are there any day offs or any special days for your staff where your staff don't come? Right, so I will use that as well. And then so I will use all these inputs to compute the revenue of the in-house dining, and then I will separately calculate, and then I'll combine to put a holistic revenue. So when you structure your thoughts meaningfully and then create a story around it, right? So that's when the interviewer would be convinced that okay, so you may not have experience as a business analyst, but you definitely have like solid analysis skills, and they will take you into the project. Does it make sense? Ritika, you want to say something?
No, nothing. I was just listening to you. Maybe ran over my
Okay. Okay, so this is again a common interview question. So so two things to keep in mind is logically structure your thoughts, and don't think that interviewer is expecting you to come up with an actual revenue number. Okay, so nobody is interested in the actual revenue. All they look at is, so how are you approaching this problem? Okay, and whether are you considering the outliers or not? So two important things. But yeah, so you all guys are almost there. You've asked a lot of good questions, so which is good. Then so we'll look at some of the questions that we discussed previously. So can somebody tell what is the definition of done?
Yeah, definition of done is when the which is done during the sprint review, and when the user is signed off the sprint and the test results are done. I mean, testing is done.
Okay.
Ravi, it is simply put, delivering the workable product at the end of each sprint.
Okay.
So it is like, what is the agreed kind of means now means sprints or items that were kind of completed at the end. So what is the output? That is what is definition done.
Okay.
So Ravi, definition of done is the agreement within the team. So once the user story is passed acceptance criteria and sign off by the business user, then we can consider the definition of done.
Yeah. Okay, so the important keyword that you should use is it is a working agreement. Okay, so and who creates this working agreement? The Scrum team creates the working agreement. So it's the working agreement created by the team on how they will determine if the work or the story that they're working in the sprint is done. Okay, so you can define definition of done based on your projects. So a simple definition of done could be what Sue just said. So my testing is done, UAT is done, and then it's signed off. Okay, so that could be a definition of done. But what is more important is telling that, okay, it's a working agreement, which is by the Scrum team. Okay, so this is like very important to call out. Okay, so the next thing is maybe we'll look at what business analysis artifacts did you prepare?
Ravi, in reality, we did not prepare all this, but how do we answer this one in case if you're not having any experience in this case?
So, so Ravi, I can put it this way. So I have worked in a Waterfall as well as in Agile methodologies. So when I was working in under Waterfall models, I was used to prepare BRD and then FSDs. And now I'm working in a Agile environment where I'm primarily responsible for prepare up user stories.
Yeah, yeah. So, Mavisha, so even if you didn't prepare, right, at least you have an understanding, right? So you can say something like this. Okay, so though I didn't prepare in my project, but I have a good understanding of what are the artifacts, right? And there is a whole set of artifacts that a BA prepares, which we have gone through the sessions, right? So you need to list out all those artifacts that you're aware of, and then once you list out, right, people will go into the details and ask you. So okay, so you have prepared a BRD. You're saying you prepared a BRD. Can you explain what is the structure of a BRD? So what goes into a BRD? So we looked at a BRD and an FSD, right?
Yeah. So you're asking me what is goes into the BRD, right?
No, in general, I mean to everyone.
Okay.
So BRD is nothing, Ravi, but it is the requirements as we get from the business. So it is what is to be delivered rather than focusing on how is it going to be delivered. So we will have different sections like the version control,
Or
the stakeholders.
so
Sorry,
Sorry.
he's talking, I think. Yeah, go ahead, Maninder.
No, I was just saying that we'll have version control, the stakeholders who are involved, right? Then we'll have a section for the each set of requirements we need to meet, right? So everything will be in the VRD.
Okay, so you need to list all the sections because questions like these, right, are good opportunities to create impression. So you need to there are like different sections in the BRD, right? So you need to list
Okay.
all the sections, so that will give you more chances of clearing interviews.
Okay, got it. Yep.
Okay, so we can continue again tomorrow. Can you think of any examples of whose daughter is that smiling cutely? So can you think of this answer for this question? So what do you plan to answer for this question? So what are the challenges you faced as a business analyst? Okay, so when people ask this question, right? So you may not have actually worked as a business analyst, but you would have definitely performed some of these roles of a business analyst, right? Like the responsibilities of a business analyst. So you think from that perspective, what challenges did you find when you faced, when you did you face when you in these responsibilities? So think of any good answers, then I'll give you like 2 to 3 ideal answers, and then you can reuse that structure for your answers. Yeah. So in the next session, right, so we'll focus more on interview questions, situational questions, and all of these. And after that, so I'll set up sessions with each of you guys to go through your CV, prepare your CVs, and then you're good to explore in the market.
And Ravi, I think we are left with a few topics as well, like how to.
Jira, you said you'll be taking over one session.
Yeah, so Jira, that's a good, yeah, good you reminded me. So Jira, yeah, I can take through, yeah.
And how to prioritize requirements.
Yeah, so prioritization, so we'll cover in one of the interview questions. Yeah, so,
Ravi, you told also you will cover that basics of FX payment in 10 minutes something.
yeah, so that's not mandatory for all of them. So anyone who's interested, so you can join. So it will be like overview of capital markets and overview of trade life cycle, but
Yeah.
it's not mandatory for everyone. So if you're looking to get into capital markets, then you can join. Yeah.
Is it
Also,
separate session or it is the same?
No, it's a separate session, so which I'm taking for like other people as well. So if you're interested, you can join, but it's not mandatory to become a business analyst.
Okay. Thank you.
Ravi, if you have a time, you can discuss SQL as well.
Oh, SQL. Okay.
You said you'll say some basics of SQL.
Basics of SQL. Okay. Fine. Yeah. So I can. How many of you are interested in learning SQL?
Yeah, I mean just the basic what the business analyst do day-to-day work. That's all. What is required for him?
Yeah. So you need to know how to. So do you guys know how to write? Did you write any database queries, or is it like the first time?
It's a first.
So Ravi, Note-
Sorry, did you write?
Ravi,
Even I was interested for the SQL thing because they are asking us in the interviews,
Yeah, yeah.
like, do you know?
SQL is like common expectation. Sure. So I can. So so I can explain you like basic selects, inner queries, subqueries, then joins, and some analytical functions. Yeah. So I'll set up a database for you guys, and then you can work out. Yeah, no issues. Anyone else who's interested? So I think Mabisha, Venkatesh, and Mabisha, Venkatesh. And,
I can join, but I have a knowledge on that. But I can join from business analyst point of view. I can relate it. And I have idea on SQL.
okay. So I mean, how much idea can you write like joins and all, or?
Yeah, I have written it, but it's long time before. So I have to again recollect all those scenarios, kind of
Okay.
data fetching and all those stuff. I have done.
Okay, it's actually very easy, so it's not very difficult.
Yeah, normal questions actually are. It just needs to be kind of little bit knowledge has to be there. 1-2 queries, everyone I suppose will be getting into it. It's not big deal.
Okay, fine. Yeah, sounds good then.
I would rather say Ravi means this JIRA, because all the formats and everything will be on that. So I would suggest JIRA.
So Jira, I can't show you like the actual Jira because I can only show you like mock-up screen.
Yeah, that's okay, because as I told you, I had created a kind of this user login, because the 30 days it gives free. So I had kind of done a user for it, but I'm unable to use that acceptance criteria. Where should I put it? So just wanted to know related to how to write a user story, how to kind of assign it, how to use a backlog format, all those, just a kind of overview so that we have a little bit of knowledge on handling that tool.
Okay, understood. Yeah. So probably I think I will need like one session, maybe 30 minutes on JIRA and 30 minutes on SQL. So again, so it's not mandatory for everyone to do SQL. If you're interested, just join and that should be fine.
So this one, are you taking on weekend or a weekday, Ravi?
Oh, no weekend. I'm only doing on weekday. So I think maybe tomorrow let's cover the JIRA and in the first 30 minutes, maybe in the second 30 minutes we can do SQL, but I need to set up the database. So I'll see if I'm able to set up the database tomorrow we can do, otherwise we have to do it on Monday.
So Ravi, have you already started with the other batches? I just want to join for 2-3 sessions that I missed, like
I
BA
haven't
techniques.
started, so I just wanted to complete this one. There are people waiting, but I have not finalized on the dates, but it'll be most likely from next week.
Got it. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So any of you, if you missed any sessions or maybe if you want to attend any of the sessions again, just let me know. I will add you when that session happens.
Sure, Ravi.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure, Ravi.
Yeah. Thank you all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.